Good afternoon. Prime Minister Meloni, President Zelensky, President von der Leyen, colleagues, good morning. It's an honor to be with you today and this week. I've been here all morning, and before we get a little bit further, I would like to say a comment was made by the great Chancellor of Germany, Chancellor Merz, to Donald J. Trump, and he said it in my native language, which is English, to Donald J. Trump: stay with us and stay the course. Auf Deutsch, wir sind hier. In German, we are here. As we pursue peace between Russia and Ukraine, it is imperative that a full cessation of hostilities be followed immediately by a comprehensive reconstruction effort for Ukraine. Russia's war on Ukraine has brought destruction of an enormous magnitude for Ukraine. Russia has destroyed Ukrainian cities, and its actions have ignited broader energy, security, agricultural, food, refugee, and economic crisis. The attacks just this past week in their enormity are simply horrific. Schools, hospitals, apartments, and other civilian infrastructure have all been subject to Russian attacks, resulting in the senseless killing of Ukrainian civilians, including women and children. This must stop. After multiple years of war, continued casualties on both sides have surpassed millions, numbers that are unheard of since World War II. This level of death and destruction, again not seen since World War II, is a guiding motivation behind President Trump's mandate to achieve peace in this deadly conflict, a just peace. The destruction caused by the war is also why the United States is partnering with Ukraine to see a full restoration of this nation following a peace settlement. The United States recognizes that rebuilding Ukraine will be an enormous yet critical task that will have implications on the broader European region. We also recognize that the reconstruction of Ukraine goes well beyond just rebuilding the physical infrastructure of Ukraine, as it entails addressing the social and economic impacts of the war as well. This includes safely bringing back all Ukrainian refugees, securing the return of all illegally kidnapped Ukrainian children, ensuring that veterans of Ukraine's armed forces are given the proper care for their rehabilitation back into Ukrainian society, and undergoing a comprehensive demining operation to ensure safety for all Ukrainians in the future. On the economic side, future investments into Ukraine depend on a stable security situation. Investors need confidence, and investors need assurance that any peace deal reached will provide long-term security. That is why our efforts to secure peace are not set on just getting to a temporary ceasefire, but is instead focused on reaching a comprehensive and permanent peace settlement. All of these efforts must be addressed in any reconstruction effort. Toward that aim, the fundamental question that this conference raises is how can we, as an alliance, foster the reconstruction of Ukraine in such a way that Ukraine's sovereignty, security, and long-term political and economic stability are all guaranteed. The United States and Europe has faced such a challenge before. It has been spoken about. In the aftermath of World War II, the United States and our European allies had to transform war-torn regions back into functioning nation-states. We can see the success of such efforts most notably with the European Recovery Plan, known to us as the Marshall Plan. In recognition that a stable Western Europe was a vital priority to America's own interests, President Truman and his Secretary of State, George C. Marshall, invested both in the reconstruction efforts and the economies of Western European nations. This paved the way for economic partnerships between the United States and European nations that are still active today. The United States and Europeans can lead such an effort again with Ukraine, and we are already seeing progress toward this aim. The Economic Partnership Agreement, as well as the Reconstruction Investment Fund, recently signed between the United States and Ukraine, highlights the strengthening partnership between our two nations and resembles the very key tenets of the Marshall Plan that led to the restoration of Europe decades ago. Additionally, the recent actions by France to replace a previous multinational investment spotlights the growing partnership between Ukraine and Western Europe, and I commend France for this action that will promote sovereignty over the interests of globalism. As we continue efforts to shape the vision for the future reconstruction of Ukraine, we should all operate on a unified set of principles that will guide a recovery plan for Ukraine. I would offer to you today that a central tenet of any Ukraine reconstruction effort be based on the preservation of nation-state sovereignty and democratic rule by the people of Ukraine. In the United States, the opening line of our Constitution is, "We the people." It is a clear signal that our constitutional republic is accountable to the citizens of our nation, and that our government works to protect and advance the interests of our own people and nation's sovereignty. I raised the issue of national sovereignty and democratic system of governance today in the context of the reconstruction of Ukraine, because in times when nations must rebuild and recover from devastation, nations are uniquely vulnerable. Historically, we have witnessed war-torn nations becoming victims to the interests of external actors during a reconstruction phase. We saw this in the Reconstruction era following the wars in Iraq and the wars in Afghanistan, as outside corporations and entities exploited the vulnerability of these war-torn countries and their internal governments for profit. There is also a political vulnerability that nations face during times of reconstruction, as building a nation back from devastation and destruction ultimately prevents a choice of which a pathway a country will choose. Each of the nations represented here today have faced such political vulnerability. As nations work to rebuild and recover from the economic and political hardships caused by even the recent COVID-19 pandemic, an international effort known as Build Back Better, that initiative came to prominence within the multilateral bodies of the United Nations, World Health Organization, World Economic Forum, and across other nations. The idea behind this initiative was that since a global event eroded our normal political and economic systems, there was an opportunity to build back new systems of governance. These previous initiatives that continue today introduced a different system of global governments, such as the advancement of sustainment and sustainable development goals. It advanced across nation-states the stakeholder capitalism model, which empowers multinational firms to influence the social and political systems for citizens of sovereign-born and sovereign nation-states outside of a normal democratic process through environmental, social, governance investing, commonly known today as ESG investing. It has also initiated broader digital transformation of society where technocracy supersedes or overcomes citizens' rights. In building back from hardship, each of these proposals are the empowerment of an unelected multilateral body and global governance models that are further removed from the rights and interests of the citizens of sovereign nation states. I reference these examples today because the same initiatives have been recommended for the reconstruction of Ukraine, presenting a choice of how Ukraine will rebuild its society. Therefore, as we build Ukraine back from devastation and destruction, it is a critical time of choosing. It's a time of choosing for the Ukrainian people and her international partners, of which we are all a part. Which type of nation will Ukraine be built back to? In his 2018 address to the United Nations General Assembly, President Trump remarked that, quote, "Around the world, responsible nations must defend against threats to sovereignty, not just from global governance, but also from other new forms of coercion and domination," end quote. It is this same principle that I encourage today for Ukraine and Ukraine's partners to uphold in our efforts to rebuild a sovereign Ukraine. Namely, that we prioritize reconstruction efforts that will empower local governments, foster entrepreneurship amongst the Ukrainian people in a free market economy, and promote accountable decision-making through duly elected government. These efforts will help ensure a sovereign Ukraine, which prioritizes a system of checks and balances, transparency, and the democratic rule of law. Thank you all for being here, and I look forward to hearing from the leaders represented here today and the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.
We are now honoured to welcome His Excellency Robert Abela, Prime Minister of the Republic of Malta.